Hello everyone. Today I'm going to present a philosophical argument against the notion that life arose from non-life. The notion that life arose from non-life is of course known as the theory of abiogenesis, which literally means life from non-life, or origin of life from non-living matter. The idea that life somehow arose from non-life means that non-life caused life, but this of course is problematic. Just like it's impossible for something to come from nothing, it's also impossible for life to come from non-life. The principle of proportionate causality, which is a metaphysical principle, states that whatever is in an effect must in some way be in its total cause. A cause can only give what it has, what it possesses either formally, immanently, or virtually. If a cause itself doesn't possess a particular kind of feature or quality, then it's impossible for its effect to have that particular kind of feature or quality, because whatever an effect possesses was imparted to it by its cause. A cause that does not possess life itself cannot impart life. If a cause imparts life, then it follows necessarily that that cause possesses life in some way. This philosophical analysis leads to the necessary conclusion that non-life can't cause life. Non-life is the absence of life, and the absence of life can't bring life into existence, because that would suggest that the absence of life can impart life. But that, of course, is nonsensical as well as metaphysically impossible. Metaphysical impossibility refers to something being impossible because it violates the fundamental nature of reality. Non-life can't impart life because it doesn't possess life in the first place in order to impart it. Therefore, the idea that life could arise from non-life certainly does violate the fundamental nature of reality. But let me explain why. If non-life could cause or impart life, that would imply that non-life possesses life, which would violate the law of non-contradiction, because life and non-life are mutually exclusive. Their constitutive elements cancel each other out. Therefore, it truly is impossible for life to arise from non-life. This is true whether we're talking about one inorganic substance or hundreds of inorganic substances. Hundreds of inorganic substances can't impart life any more than one inorganic substance, because life isn't in inorganic substances to be imparted in the first place. This now brings us to another important metaphysical principle, the principle of causality. In essence, the principle of causality states that whatever comes into existence must be caused or brought into existence by something. Another way of putting it is something that goes from potential to actual must be actualized by something that is already actual. Before we go any further, I think it would be good to clarify a few things, because these days there seems to be a lot of confusion regarding the principle of causality. Some seem to be under the impression that the principle of causality is an empirical principle, and have even went so far as to claim that the principle of causality only applies within the universe, the space-time continuum. This conclusion, though, is based on a confusion about the principle. While it is true that the principle of causality has been confirmed by empirical evidence, it is not the case that the principle is based on empirical evidence. The principle of causality is based on the metaphysical principle that nothing comes from nothing, which is another way of saying that from nothing, nothing comes, or something can't come from nothing. This is because nothing is non-being, which is the absence of anything. And the absence of anything can't cause something, because any kind of something possesses being, and non-being can't impart being, because if non-being could impart being, that would imply that non-being possessed being. But obviously, non-being can't possess being, because it's the absence of being. Therefore, something can only come from something. Being can only come from being. This applies within the universe as well as beyond it, because it is a metaphysical truth, not a truth pertaining to the laws of physics, which solely operate within the universe. The way this ties into my argument against abiogenesis is quite simple. No one denies that life arose here on Earth. This, of course, means that life hasn't always existed on Earth, but rather came into existence. Therefore, it must be the case that life was caused or brought into existence. But how could it be the case that life was caused by the absence of life, non-life? According to the principle of proportionate causality, that would imply that the absence of life, non-life, imparted life here on Earth. But that would further imply that non-life, certain inorganic substances, somehow possessed life so as to impart it, to cause it. That, of course, is contradictory, though. The absence of life can't possess life formally, virtually, or immanently, and therefore can't cause it to exist. It really doesn't matter how many inorganic substances are lumped together. If none of the substances possess life in some way, namely, virtually, immanently, or formally, then life can't arise from said substances. This, of course, leads us to the inescapable conclusion that life here on Earth could not have arisen from non-life. Such an idea is logically and metaphysically impossible. So, based on this philosophical analysis, the theory of abiogenesis must necessarily be false. Now, some might critique this argument by claiming that I'm confusing the category of philosophy with the category of science, which are two distinct disciplines. It is true that they are distinct, but there is nonetheless intermingling between them. However, all of the intermingling is from the standpoint of science relying on philosophy rather than philosophy relying on science. One need not refer to science in order to do philosophy, but one must refer to philosophy in order to do science. For there are a number of philosophical assumptions that scientists have to make in order to do science. Therefore, if it is the case that a particular so-called scientific theory conflicts with certain metaphysical principles, like the principle of causality and/or the principle of proportionate causality, which undergird the whole scientific enterprise, then that theory should be discarded. Well, guys, that's it for this video. As always, please let me know what you think, and remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.